It's Bill Gross, the LA probate expert, and I'm really excited here in our EXP workplace mastermind we do every Monday morning at 10 o'clock to have with us today, really my coach and mentor in probate, a guy who really launched me in this niche deeply and helped me kind of put together a plan, Chad Corbett from Probate Mastery. So, hey, Chad, how you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me back.
Little disclaimer in the background, my wife is replacing the tile on our house, so if you hear a little bang in the background, that's just my character development being worked on. And so far, I'm not doing very well, but we're going to try to manage this call.
Is there a
But
protocol in place if she comes in the room with a hammer? Should we call for help or?
I don't know. If I run out with a gun, I think call the police is the best thing to do. So yeah. So, but part of real estate, it's funny in the probate space, you have a lot of people who do fix and flips, and like you were talking about, Chad, in your case, doing a lot of that. I've never done any. I've only done lipstick flips. I bring in investors, and I haven't picked up a hammer. I wouldn't know what kind of screwdriver. I'm just not. That's just not my game at all. But I think the thing that I've come to learn is probably it's such a wide space within real estate that it covers so many different topics. So we had you on a few weeks ago and we had a kind of a background. So I want to kind of take it to the next level maybe and talk about for people who are in the business, they're working on probate, trying to build their business and kind of expanding it, kind of talk from there. So I know you get, and I've substituted on your mastermind alumni call a few times, you get a phone call that goes something like, hey, I signed up and got some data and I mailed out some postcards. I may even have called everybody once. When does the flood of business come in the door? I'm here waiting at the door. I don't see a line out the door of people looking to list and sell their house with me. So how would you describe kind of what it takes for somebody to go from getting started and taking some initial steps to actually building a business in the probate space?
Yeah, it's a good question and one that I've, from a customer experience, like as a trainer, I've held myself, try to always hold myself to a higher standard than who I was last year or yesterday even. So how can we make it easier? And I would say the differentiator between people who like yourself that are earning high six low seven figures, the common denominator there is they're really clear and confident that their offer is valuable and to the families. And that's what I would say is the root of this. Now, when you get to that point, it means you enthusiastically pick up the phones. You enthusiastically write a new letter or a variation of the last letter you sent. You wake up in the morning and think, okay, who am I going to reach today that I didn't reach yesterday that I can literally change the outcome of the short-term part of their life. And that enthusiasm comes through in everything you do. If you entered this space thinking it was a get rich quick scheme and you needed a quick hit of income like a lot of folks do, fortunately not in this community. Like I think we do a good job of kind of creating a culture where people realize, oh, okay, so this is a servant's community. Like this is where you provide value first and then expect something in return. So benevolence more than altruism. But the people who come in with that opposite mindset of I just need some quick money, I'm willing to try anything, they tend to be rushed on the phone. They go straight to real estate. They drive people inward because they sound like everyone else that does a terrible job that might have called before them. And if you have a selfish one-sided approach, this will be a hard fought uphill battle. You'll probably never hit that momentum where it just goes on autopilot and becomes
Right.
fun.
Right.
If you have that benevolent outlook and say, you know what, I'm going to find ways to provide a level of service and value to families that no one can match, then you start to attract business to you. Your team does almost everything. You can delegate it and you can work 2 or 3 days a week and do more business than you've done in the past. And that's how my story unfolded. It's how yours is unfolding. Like you have time you told me, I don't know, it's been 8 or 9 months ago, but you're spending more time with your family than you ever have. You're remodeling your house. You're doing this, ancillary content. There's no need to desperately prospect anymore.
Mhm.
And, there's so many of those faces and names in our community. David Pinnell, same thing. When I met him, when he first took this course, spinning his wheels, did it his way for 8 months and had not got a single closing. And when it was that mindset shift, he got clear on a value first offer, not I'm a real estate broker with Cities Real Estate.
Mhm.
Everything changed. And he went from, I think he had a 6-person ISA team. a $10,000 a month office lease. I don't know, like 15 people in an office, lots of overhead, working 7 days a week. Two, sitting at home, remodeling his house while he and his wife live in it with their newborn, and their marriage is surviving that, by the way. But he's able to work 2 or 3 days a week and make seven figures in the space. And obviously, with him, he's got investment activity as well as brokerage activity.
Right.
That's why he can make a $50,000 to $100,000 per deal on some of them. Others he brokers, and he might make as little as $3,000 to $5,000, on a low value brokered deal. But that's what I would say. Anyone who's doing this is, if you committed to the niche for the right reason, then you shouldn't find much problem accessing enthusiasm, creativity, and the grit that it takes. Now, how long does that take? I love the stories of where people sign up, they start making their first round of calls, and they break into, like, literally some people have had 6-figure commissions on their first phone call. Roger Lisi, was 63 years old when he took the class, never had ever made an outbound prospecting call. He just relied on sphere of influence and referrals, but he didn't prospect. Like, he didn't have campaigns. So I juiced him up and got him on the phone, got his confidence level up, and he got a $7 million commercial out parcel in the path of progress. It was a hayfield, then he sold it for $7 million. So, like, those stories happen. Obviously, we've got, hundreds of those, but the more common story is in month one, you're super excited. You're like, this is going to work. Everything's going to change. I'm going to be Bill Gross or Chad Corbett or David Pinnell tomorrow. And then nothing happens. Nobody answers the phone. Nobody returns voicemail. Nobody calls you. And you think, and then that little voice in your head starts, right? And this is where it's important that you be clear on your offer and clear on your objective of actually serving and helping these folks. But a lot of people will have 2 or 3 months of it's slow. And then all those people who thought they didn't need your help in month one and month two, when they get into month three, they're 3 months into the probate process. They know they're procrastinating. They know that they don't understand certain things. They know that it's the decision to deal with the personal property is one of the toughest things to emotionally overcome. The logistics of it are a whole nother ball game when you're in that mindset. And all of a sudden they just feel overwhelmed and they're like, so I got to get help. And that's when your phone starts to ring. And over time, that will compound and you'll get to a point, usually around 6 to 8 months, people get to a point where they have as much inbound business as they do outbound business. And for me, that's where I certainly within 6 months, I was up to about per quarter, about a 2% response rate per quarter. I would run a campaign for 3 months. So over that 3 months, it was, an accumulated 6% conversion rate on the list. So I think that answered the question in quite a few words, but.
No, I think it did, which is, I think there's two aspects to this that you discussed. One is the time. It's deep. It takes time for this to work. And like anything else in life that's worthwhile, it takes time. Any relationship takes time. Any business takes time. Anything of value takes time. And it's also width. You have to be willing to do more things to create value for your customer than the past. And I think that, one of the experiences I have, I don't know if you get this on your call, but I'll be excited. I'll find some vendor that I find fascinating and another little piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle, but just a nice piece. I recently had a like a estate sale lady, and she was great. And I just thought she really came from the right spot and did a nice job. And I had this guy, like, I thought this was about how to sell more probate. And like, don't you get it? This is how you do it. Like, this is what it is. Like, if you create more value for your customer than anybody else does, then naturally you're the person they're going to come to or refer other people to. And as agents, we tend to have such a short-term focus and a very narrow, where's my commission check? Rather than saying, if I create value for people, it creates, for me in the long run. So how do you, and I know you have it, it struck me right away that you have a servant's heart on this process. And I saw that right away. I said, well, that makes this whole business more interesting, more fun. Are you able to get agents who come in kind of with a commission breadth approach to change? Or is it just more kind of they get selected out, or those kind of people don't come in the program in the first place?
Obviously, as a course creator, an online course and community, founder, you have marketing is your business, right? You have to know how to market to reach people.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not going to have a business. You're not going to have a community. So I'll answer that question from my marketer's seat. It's incredibly difficult to get the typical real estate professional, whether it's on brokerage or investment. We've all been conditioned on this old school sales. It's a numbers game. You gotta hear 10 or 9 no's to get your yes. Just hammer the phones. Repetition
Right.
is everything. Use a script, and by God, get your money out of their pocket.
Right.
And that is unfortunately residual in our industry. And
Right.
I think it's a cultural cancer on the industry, where the people who really excel at real estate are the ones that focus on customer experience. They don't sit and talk about their sales, their brokerage, their listing presentation, all that. None of that stuff matters to the average consumer. Unless that consumer has exposure to the real estate world, they probably don't give a damn. What they care about is the emotional outcome that your service can bring them. So what I normally ask folks, I challenge a lot of folks to do this: pull out a blank spreadsheet, and in column A, I want you to make a header in row 1. What problems could they have? And in column B, I want the header to be, what solutions can I provide? And then column C, you could put in, which team member do I need? So you've got 3 columns. Go down the list. And this is an exercise. The reason I don't hand this list to people is because it would be almost useless if I just hand it to you.
Yep.
What this exercise will force you to do is find empathy for their position. And I want you to, no matter how big or how small, you could even add another column and like rate it. So like, is this a big problem, small problem, or not a problem? You could have even a rating for the problem, but no matter how small, my, siblings fighting, heir has passed away. And as you start to understand probate, you'll see more and more of these potential problems. For example, if one of the heirs has passed away, and whether they did or did not have a will, their part of the estate is going to the next generation, whoever's in their line of succession. So now it's like, think of it as a branch. Like, you get to the end of that branch, this person's gone, he has 4 kids. So now the complexity of the probate has branched out to have 4 more people involved that you didn't expect to be involved. So it's a very easy solution. Like the solution you can have there is having a really, really good real estate attorney that does your closings, or a title company that can actually skip trace, locate, and get paperwork to those other 4 people. It doesn't mean you have to do any more work, but you can still take 100% of that on as your responsibility, be accountable for it, and let the family relax. So as you go down column A, think about all of those things, like house full of personal property. I live out of country, or I live out of town, or out of state. I, have 3 kids, and I can't get there to do what needs to be done. Nobody has access to the property. A family member is squatting. Someone broke in and is squatting. And like, all of those will make you think, what problems could arise in any probate situation? Who on my vendor team can deal with it, so I don't have to, but I still get the social credit, and the family doesn't have to do it? And then, do I have that person, or where can I find that person? And I'll tell you this: you'll never finish that spreadsheet. If you commit to this niche, you will find that column A will continue to populate with unique problems you've never heard of, never thought of. Like, holy hell, I've seen it all now. That column will never stop populating itself. But the other columns, what solutions do you have, and what team members do you need to help you? That's only going to be a couple of dozen different solutions and vendors. It always grows over time, but not at the same rate as your awareness of the problems in probate. And there's COVID specific challenges that have found their way into column A, and whatever's coming next, whether there's an economic collapse or interest rates go to 20%, like whatever that might be, new circumstantial problems will present themselves to these families, which gives you an opportunity to what? Innovate. You can always be innovating, always be improving your offer, always be raising your level of customer experience. And so if you can get through that exercise, and you are excited about what you can actually do, like what you can deliver in column B and column C, then you'll have a long, successful, profitable career in this space. If you can't get yourself to do the exercise, or you can't even think of something to put in column A, you should probably go aggravate your sphere of influence to see if you can make somebody to buy some real estate.
Well, two things I say that. One is, for me, I'm constantly adding new vendors to problems I've already solved because I find a better vendor, find somebody who's more aligned with what I do. They're in a different geography. They're have a different approach to it, and they become potentially another source of referrals. The other thing you said, I think that I've been coaching agents in my probate team on is taking your program, I think just maybe a little deeper or maybe different approach. Anybody who has a COI, there's people in your database who should be on your service list, right? You have a guy, and you didn't ask, you sold my house 3 years ago, and he's a painting contractor. He's a whatever. He has a contractor that does trash out. He has his cousin does estate sales. You didn't ask the wife does estate sales now. I think it's important to go through your database and identify what people do and look for people you can put into your vendor positions. Attorneys is another one. You used an attorney, they had an attorney for their estate plan. Well, that's one you should definitely find out. Well, Jay, you took title in a trust. Who did that estate plan for you? I talk to people all the time that need an estate plan. Can I, call them up and refer them business? Not ask for referrals, but offer them business and put them into your list of, potential providers. So I think real estate agents have in their database, I think a lot of these providers already, they're looking to grab business from them rather than feed and fertilize those relationships. Fertilize is probably the right term, but help grow those relationships into being more valuable. So you got a shout out from Michael Reed. He said, "Hey Chad," and he's on our internal, so he can't chat with us here. So just kind of, "Hey Chad" from Michael Reed.
Hey, Mike.
Janice asked, "What's your value add?" So you use that term, and I know what it means, but you're the teacher, so I'll let you answer. When you say, "What is your value add that you bring to your customer?" What do you mean by that?
So I bring a vertically integrated solution. So one phone call can deal with all their problems. And you're hard pressed to find a practitioner that can match that statement outside of these communities, like my community, Bill's community. It's just not how most real estate professionals approach the business. So what I'm saying about getting clear on your offer is that exercise that we just talked about. Once you perform that, then you'll be clear on which team members you need, what they can do for you. You'll find ways that you can, support them and provide value to them before, like just being part of that team is valuable to them. Right. They have co-marketing opportunities. They have referral opportunities within, within the team. So I would say if I had to narrow it down to one thing, like that would be it, the power of the vertically integrated approach, but you're not having to manage every little piece of the machine. You're just presenting that as your offer, a compelling offer to differentiate yourself and attract a business to you. While all of your vendors are getting paid individually for the parts, and you don't have to do much more coordinating other than the one thing I would say, in order for this to be kind of automated, so it's easy to delegate, you just have to be a good communicator. So for me, once I've left an appointment, whether it's an acquisition or a listing, the first thing I do, I'll come home, I'll draft an email that includes all of the heirs, and basically everyone that's going to be part of the process, even with the real estate attorney, even the deal's not even an escrow. And I start copying the attorney whose office it's headed for from the very beginning, because I want them to see. So I'll actually address the family in the opening of the email and say, it was great to meet you. Here's what we discussed. By the way, if you look below, here's the estimated schedule and who you'll be hearing from. And there I'll actually list out, so clean out. I'll say, ABC Cleaning Company will be calling you on Tuesday between 2 and 3 p.m. They're CC'd on this email. Behind that will be Molly Maid will come in and do the deep clean, and they will be calling you around this time. After that, we've got a stager. After that, the photographer. After that, the Twilight video guy, whatever that might be. And I just lay out the schedule with the contact information of each of the vendors, and then I carbon copy every one of the vendors. So we've got attorneys, contractors, clean out crews, deep clean crews, photographers, stagers, and they're all CC'd on one email. And then it says vendors, please reply all to any and all communications within this thread. So we're all always on the same page and not chasing each other. Little things like that. I learned early in my residential career how chaotic it can be if you're a poor communicator. If you communicate clearly from the very beginning and set proper expectations, this can literally be basically automated. I mean, you can spend 5 minutes sending an email and it'll take your team 3 months to execute that work sometimes. But your email, if you're clear and everybody else is clear, you don't have to go chase all the pieces. You move on to the next deal and help the next family. And that may sound like, oh, bullshit, it would never happen that way. It actually does. Like if you have a good system in place, your people respect you, you trust that they will do what they said they would do, and you be willing to fire them on as soon as they don't, you take that personally because it threatens your reputation and you go replace them. And if you build those relationships with that expectation of you have to meet this standard, they won't trip up. I've never had to let a partner go. None of my vendors have ever tripped up to a point where I said, man, we can't do this anymore, because I did a good job vetting them and finding the right ones on the front end. If you find better ones, you can sub them in or you can have two. But if you can do that, like if you can make that vertically integrated, we can help with everything, one-stop shop offer to a consumer, that you're very, very unique. That's a huge differentiator. If you can actually deliver on it, you're even more unique, because other people can get a hold of your marketing and claim to do the same thing you do. But without the second part of that I talked about, the communication skills and the processes, it's going to be chaos anyways. And they're going to despise it. Like they're probably not even going to get it across the finish line. So those are it's the one big value add is having a solution for any and every problem. It's from a marketing standpoint, it's creating dozens of hooks, dozens of reasons that they would respond to your marketing. They might not even be thinking about selling the house, but they might respond because that your message about not having vacant property insurance struck a chord, and they're like, what does he mean? Where do I get that? I've never heard of such things. And they may call you to deal with one little tiny insurance issue. But once you have an organic conversation, you start to hear the stress level in their voice. You start to ask questions and say, what else could you guys use help with? It sounds like you're really stressed. And then they just give you your service roadmap. They tell you everything else that they need. And because you did that exercise, when they say something in column A, you know exactly what your solution is in column B, and you know exactly who to delegate it to in column C. Yeah. So you're essentially, if you're doing this right, the way I did it, my job was basically to talk on the phones with prospects and to go on appointments with clients or customers. And if you're doing, if you're into this, months into it, when you're at momentum, if you're doing much more, then you're doing too much. You need to delegate yourself out of some of those roles, because the whole methodology is really designed for that, so you can work less, earn more, and do good in your communities.
No, I would say this is really a solution for all real estate, not just probate. Maybe
Absolutely.
It becomes more common in probate because there's more problems, if you want to say it that way. One of my other coaches was Joel Epstein, and he has a line that says, if you have any questions regarding real estate from your front sidewalk to your back fence, whether it go all the way down or up, give me a call. I either have a guy or I'll get a guy or gal to help solve the problem. And I had heard that, and then I had taken your probate mastery about almost 3 years ago. Well, next month will be 3 years. And I remember I got a phone call from I called an attorney friend of mine who was a client, and I was just calling him, hey, how you doing? And he said, I had this client who has a problem with title. Can you help? I was trained, she's not selling a house, so I'm not going to really get involved in it. But your training was the opposite. I'm looking for people with problems that I can solve to create a relationship. So I said, yeah, I'll give her a call. And I've told this story a few times. I called her up and she started describing it. She's a widow. Her husband of 50 years had left her this rental property. It was a 6-unit building. And she said, well, could you come by and check it out? And yeah, I'll check it out. She had a question about the fence and the line and whatever. We walked around the property, really sweet lady. And at the end of about a 45-minute walk around, she just turned to me and said, you know what? I really don't want this anymore. Could you just sell it for me? And that my listing presentation was, sure, why not? And we
Yep.
sold it. And I literally put it in the escrow, 2-3 weeks, we priced it right, closed escrow, brought her a check for proceeds of $500,000. She started crying and said, I always wanted to move to Arizona, be with my sister. Could you sell my residence too? I said, sure, why not? And I sold 2 houses just by being of service, not knowing the answer, not even knowing how to solve the answer. Now I have a title rep and I knew to get them involved. It turned out it wasn't really even an issue in this case. I didn't even have to solve the problem. So it really comes from being a servant rather than, I think, and I know that you take pride in solving these people's problems, and I do too, but usually it is just one thing. It's not usually 10. I've had cases with 8, I think. That's unusual, but usually it's just one thing that starts the dialogue, and then they want to work with you, and it solves it from there.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the most common thing that I've dealt with is just helping them get the personal property cleared out. I mean, that's usually the extent. And, and I sometimes I really enjoy the more complex side of this because I like to be able to show people what the potential is. So I a lot of times have really high level conversations where I'm using advanced tactics and I'm teaching people to joint venture with the family to actually establish a basis and create a bunch more equity and then turn them into private lenders. But the reality is these are honestly less complicated and often almost every time far easier than a conventional transaction.
Yeah.
The families, there's just once you have rapport, you create this unshakable trust. Like they explicitly trust you, and whatever you say, they say, okay, that's good with me. Or listen, you don't even have to talk to me about that. Just we trust, we know we found the right person. You do what you think needs to be done. You let us know when something needs signed. And you can literally, I mean, these were the fastest cash conversion deals I've like, other than, straight up investor deals. But on market deals, these have the fastest cash conversion rate because they're not unrealistic on price. They want to get it done so they can move forward and have money in the estate's bank account. And after that initial conversation, they always show for the appointment, but at the appointment, they're like engaged and they want to learn about it.
Right.
And when you leave there, they're just kind of like, okay, we're done. In their mind, they are. So oftentimes it's you'll bring in 1 or 2 partners over maybe a 5 to 7 day period. The house then goes on the market.
Yeah.
With mine, like even in 2011, 12, 13, like that was here, we really bottomed in the summer of 2012 was when values bottomed out in Roanoke. And then it started to rebound very slowly. This is not a growth market. This is a very flat market. We didn't fall nearly as far as everyone else because we didn't have nearly the rise, but it was slow. Transaction volumes were cut by 2/3, but I could still sell a probate house on average in 8 days. And the reason that is I would list 15% under what I thought market value was. And then we wouldn't respond to a single offer until the 8th day. And that gave us an opportunity to create the urgency in the marketplace that we needed. But otherwise, I had one probate property go 81 days, and it was because beautiful condo, like, I don't know, $60,000 rehab, everything was brand new, but sure, her mother inherited it from a daughter and she was a chain smoker. And that place, it was, Serve Pro, I think, wanted $18,000 for smoke remediation. But what I eventually ended up doing was changing the way I marketed the property. And I actually created a seller holdback that was in escrow for smoke remediation. So I took it out of the net proceeds of the estate in order to get it sold. Because we had showings that lockbox was popped, I don't know how many times, and it would usually be back in, like they would put the key back in the lockbox within a minute or two. So I could tell just by looking at my Supra report that the smoke was the problem. We were priced right, our marketing was right, the smell is what was killing us. So that's what we ended up doing on that one. But it's usually just 1 or 2 vendors associated in a given deal. It's not a big complex deal. And these usually close very, very quickly. And with the most grateful clients you'll ever have. I'll say this: if you aren't doing video testimonials in your real estate business, yesterday was the day to start. And when you work with these probate sellers, you will not find a more grateful person that will be happy to give you a glowing review. David Pinnell, one of the members we've referenced here a couple of times,
Yeah.
he just released a video last week.
Yeah.
He paid a
Heartbreaking.
video guy $400 to sit at the closing table with him and shoot B reel, and then they shot A reel interviews, and he merged that together in a 3 to 5 minute clip. That literally, this lady went from hanging up on him 4 times, answering, staying on the phone the 5th time, to not being able to sell a piece of real estate because of a title issue, to actually making life-changing money. And her sentiment toward David is just the hell. It gives you cold chills just to watch the video. And I mean, I let dozens upon dozens upon dozens of those go because I was in a hurry, or I didn't want to embarrass them or ask them to do it. And I didn't capture those testimonials. But you'll find that the people who get this right, their clients are excited to give them a testimonial, video testimonials, written testimonials. And that in itself will, is a currency in the business, but it'll attract more people to you as well.
One of the things I've learned in this business is real probate experts brag about the number of problems they have to solve. The greedy normal realtors complain about each issue. So it's almost like when you get together people of your masterminds, like, well, I had this case, it was so bad, blah, blah. Mine was worse. I had this. That's how you can tell they're legit, because the bigger problem you solve, the deeper the connection with the customer, right? Because you showed them what you can do before you even started. So there's no contest with the competition. I already moved mountains for these people. They're not going to let somebody just cold call them on the phone and take the file away for 0.5% commission. It just doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, the culture of our community, like it's so fun. On like Tuesday afternoons are fun for me because I'm like, what are we going to hear about this week? And it's people come in not with like, oh, I'm not going to get paid on this one because there's this title issue. It's like, hey, Chad, I got one for you. Like, what do we do here? And they're in, like I said in the very beginning of this, they have an enthusiasm about the problems because they see them as opportunities.
Right.
So, and that's such a fun, like, I don't know, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've yet to find a single probate deal that we couldn't find a relatively simple strategy to navigate through it and actually get the end result, even a better end result oftentimes than the family expected. So,
and if it's a complicated process, then all the better. I mean, I don't really catch myself the problem. One of the things that turns people off, I think, a lot about probate at first glance, it turned me off initially, was it seemed like until you came along, and maybe a few iterations ago even, but until, other than you, I always found that probate was taught as like how to be a more effective vulture. And here's how you see the lame animals in the desert dying, and here's how you swoop in and kill them and make money. And you can buy the house really low, and then you can make money as an investor, and you can double in the deal, and then you sell it so good that the buyer will resell it with you, and they flip it again, and you're going to make 4 times the money the family is. And I guess maybe that went on in years past. I think it did. I think in LA, when the court was spread out amongst 13 courts in each area, real estate agents and investors got away with some things. In LA, they put all into one court, a little more visibility, a little more accountability, and all of a sudden you can't get away with those things anymore the same way. Did something change in the industry, or was it just the competitive nature of business forced those people out? Or what happened that is no longer the dominant process in probate, do you think?
well, I'd like to think that the approach I've been teaching for the last almost decade, all of the content on YouTube, every time somebody watches this, like engages with this conversation, and it resonates with them and they prescribe to that, and then they go out as a practitioner and take that into a market, then it makes it really, really hard to compete if you're not matching that, like getting close to that person's value. Like they will begin to take market share. So I think I'd like to think, and like honestly, that over the last 8 years of doing this, that's the impact that I said I was going to create in the beginning. The hundreds of thousands of families that I would reach. Stepping out of production for me was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done, because I thought, I'm going to lose. Not only am I going to take away an income stream, I'm going to lose credibility. But what I didn't realize was I was taking one set of problems from one 3-county market that I was working, And I was expanding that into 3,149 counties and thousands of other people's problems.
Yep.
So my skill set, I was, I was held accountable to really step up because I had to help. These came at me at a much faster pace because I was helping 1,000 people try to figure out how to transaction engineer these deals and get solutions in place. So part of it is probably that, like, there's enough information out there now that more people are actually using this value first methodology, and you can't compete with it unless you, like, they say you can't beat them. If you can't beat them, join them. Like, if you're using that selfish, one-sided, we buy houses, close fast, make a decision right now kind of approach, it's pretty damn hard to compete with me. Like, if you don't get it papered on the first phone call, you're not getting it papered, because by the time I speak with them, I'm going to be, they're inviting me to family cookouts because I'm going to go over there and we're going to have a much different conversation on the phone. But when they meet me, they're going to have a chance to look me in the eye. And the promise they hear from me is I don't get paid $1 until I do exactly what I promise. Right. So my focus is to learn what your problems are, what your goals are, to fully disclose what my strategy is, give you a choice of which of those options work best for you. And then me and my team will go execute. How do you compete with me? If I can meet all of, and the other thing, I mean, what I teach in probate mastery is in that, in session 3, we spend almost 6 hours breaking apart the initial phone call and the appointment. And what you'll find in that is there's a lot of psychology in there, even if it's not necessarily taught as a psychology class. A lot of the tricks that I've learned to help people feel safe, to get them to really let their problems and concerns, let them vent that off. Because if you can be a good listener when somebody's talking about their problems, what are they doing for you? They're simply drawing the service roadmap. They're telling you it's literally paint by numbers real estate service. I have a problem with this. I have a problem with this. I don't know how to do this. And this is a problem. Well, in your mind, you're like, okay, solution. I have a solution for that. I have a solution for that. I'll just do that for them. I have a solution for that. And then you just recap that to them and say, okay, so we identified problem A, B, C, and D. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to deal with A in this way, B in this way, C in this way, D in this way. Here's the blue pen. Let's get started. And it's literally that easy. That's all I ever did. So I like to think that it's the culture within this niche has shifted because we have a lot more practitioners with a lot more integrity. Mm-hmm. And that's holding the others accountable. Like they just have a hard time competing when somebody comes into their market doing it this way. And that's what, another conversation I often have with people when they're early in, they're like, is this really going to work here? Like, is this something is it going to last? And I mean, I'm telling you guys, if you put your flag in the sand, Bill's in one of the most competitive markets in the country that I've ever coached in. But he's got his flag in the sand and he's doing an extra 3 deals a month. That's significant revenue. That's life-changing money. David Pinnell is in Fort Worth, Texas. There's 30,000, there's 3,000 realtors, an estimated 7,000 or 30,000 investors, and all of the iBuyers. And he's beating the pants off of all of them. He gets more listings than any of the other brokers. He gets more acquisitions than the iBuyers and the investors combined. And he's doing it at an average of 56 cents on the dollar. Mm. Why can one man who works 3 days a week compete with Zillow and Open Door and Knock and 30,000 investors and 3,000 realtors? Why is that? It's because of his offer. Because of his approach, because of his conversational style. And that's, a lot of people, some people have been critical of my course because they're like, well, I came in this to learn about probate and I don't know any more than I did when I got mine. I'm like, I didn't tell you I was teaching a probate law class. If you want to go learn useful logistics or useless logistics about probate, go talk to the clerk. She'll give you all the information you could possibly want. What I'm focused on is people and situation. And then you figure out the logistics after you know who are the people, what situation are they in, what situation can I help them get to. Then you figure out the logistics of it. But it's if you can look at this not as a real estate campaign, but a people campaign where you get rewarded through real estate. then you can excel with this and in short order. I mean, usually inside of 90 days, you can be making like you can be building real wealth inside of 90 days.
If you have questions, put in the chat box, either here in the Zoom call or in the workplace. I see a question from Michael asking about how about Orlando? I assume somebody's moving to Florida with a lot of probates. I know there are. Chad and I both interviewed a great guy, Al Nicoletti, who's in Jacksonville, but his mailing address is in Orlando. He does probate in Florida. There's a ton of probate in Florida. And you have an opportunity uniquely if you're in a network like Chad's, like I am, that you get people in other states. So the guy who moved to Orlando still has his house in New York or in Boston, and you network, you get a referral, you build your business. At EXP, you bring somebody on the team, and now you have a downline in another state. I have one in Georgia. Great opportunities. So what do you see as a market in other markets like, say, Orlando, Florida? Is that a good market as well? And I think the answer is yes. They're all good markets.
There aren't any bad markets. I tend to answer questions with stories, but I'll tell you that, the story of David Gwynn in Denver, Colorado. Denver is the most difficult market that I've ever had to coach in because there's two divisions of their record of the probate clerk, the probate records. One division where the petitions are filed is private. You have to pay $5 per record for access to even open the file. They hit your card and then they let you see it. So for data companies, it's most of them, you just can't gather it. I mean, it'll cost you $1,800 a month just to get the data without even skip tracing and everything else that you have to do. So most lists that are coming out of the Colorado market are coming out of the other side of the courthouse, which is when when the probate closes and records. So on top of that, you've got in Eastern Colorado, you've got an incredibly fiercely competitive market because of the net inflow and their population. I mean, half of California has moved to Eastern Colorado in the last decade. So it's fiercely competitive, and I've got one in Colorado Springs, Dave is in Denver, and Fred is up around what's north of Denver, that area.
Colorado Springs or
no, that's south.
Aurora, Boulder, yeah. Boulder South too.
It's up that way. Anyways, there's kind of like three distinct areas that are on that western side of the state. I've found that all three are just as competitive. But within 4 months, all three of those people, two were just brokerage, and then Dave is an investor that also has a brokerage partner. But regardless of what their strategy was, within 4 months, we were able to actually get to that kind of critical mass, like where we could trust consistent response rates. And that's the toughest market in the country. You're a year late. Like the data was, the petition was filed a year ago. You've got tens of thousands of competitors, but still I think he was one of the first mastery students. He's been running that Colorado market since probably 2014 or 15. And he is also, as he wanted to scale, Colorado was so damn hard. He decided to come to Brevard County, Florida, and maybe Colliers. It basically New Smyrna Beach down to Cocoa is what he identified as, what the hell, I'll try to scale into that market. So he came into the Space Coast, not having ever even been there. And he, as an investor, he has a brokerage partner that he refers. So he's running both strategies, but he is the investment side of it. So he's been virtually wholesaling in a Florida market where he knew nobody, had no relationships, had no market knowledge, as well as running the Denver market, which is probably the toughest, most competitive one in the country. So all that to say, the market doesn't matter nearly as much as you believing the other things we've talked about on this call. Craft an offer that you're enthusiastic about, that you really believe in. And what I mean by that is, like, when no one's looking, when no one else is around, do you think you're full of shit, or do you think that these families are far better off hearing from you than not hearing from you? And when you have that latter belief, when you have that level of conviction, it's time to roll. And the market doesn't matter. I coached a 26-year-old kid in Midtown Manhattan, never taken a real estate listing. He had been licensed for less than a month. Between July and December of 2016, Seth made $750,000 only listing property, only in the probate space. and all he did was send letters and make phone calls. He didn't even do the more advanced things that we talk about. He broke into one of the oldest, most protected listing markets in the world,
Sure.
and was able to take his first 6 months in real estate. He made $750,000. So the market doesn't matter nearly as much as the person and what that person's mindset is around this. You can't be stopped. If you have a servant's heart and you're doing this as a, for benevolent reasons, that nobody's going to compete with you. You just don't have competition. It's you, and you put your flag in the sand. And if you do this right, if you build a brand around it, it becomes a sellable asset. So if you have, OrlandoProbatePros.com, and you have the team built, and you've got a Facebook community that where your vendor partners come in and like do these live interviews like we're doing right now, and they answer directly to families. Here's how you deal with X, Y, and Z. Here's how we can help, or here's how you can do it on your own. You start to build a true community in that Orlando area. Well, when it's time for you to retire or move into a fifth wheel and live in a different state every 3 days,
No.
then you can actually sell that. Like, it's a sellable asset.
Especially the XP, where we have a downline, right? You talk to other people, you have listings that create buyer leads, and you have other ways to generate your downline as a result. So talk a little bit, the thing I think that you did when I started with you, I think it was the first day, you made like a marketing plan where you had a spreadsheet and what the cost was of postcards, and you projected like how many months you're going to do it. And I think it was like 6 months. So so for me, like the first month I got 300 leads times 6 months is $1,800, and then the second month times 5 months was $1,500. You add it all up, and in the initial outlay, and I'm thinking that you really need to commit for about 6 months to see.
Right. Welcome, members. Sorry,
if you do the business. I'm sorry. Do you have to go, or do you have a few minutes?
No, I was going to grab one of the course handouts and offer it to your community.
Oh, okay. I was saying, so by the time you add up, it could be thousands of dollars. And if you're not bringing money in, it gets to be, and what I've seen, I'm sure you have too, is people start with intention, I'll be in it for 6 months. And after that first month or second month, they go, well, I spent the money, I haven't got returns yet. Well, yeah, you haven't got returns yet because it takes about 3 months to start seeing it. I've never farmed. I'm a city boy, but I know that you put seeds and you put the dirt on, you don't get crops that week. I know there was like a few month delay of watering and fertilizing and things you do to get a crop. So what's your best advice for people starting out? How much should they invest? What kind of approach should they take to make that investment financially?
Okay, so I am sorry to be distracted. I'm dropping a link right now. This is a course handout. This is a calculator that I built. It's just an Excel format. So if you have any Excel nerds, you guys can edit that. This will help you set proper expectations for yourself as you ask that question Bill just asked. It's market dependent, and it's also dependent on how aggressive you want to be. I found that, like, for me, paying for a list, using all the leads to pull my list, using all the leads for mail fulfillment, and just using a ringless voicemail drop or making my own phone calls, I would spend about $1,100 a month to run the campaign. And that resulted in a market where my probate median sell price is $117,000. But my return, I would make around $21,000, an average of $21,000 in gross commission. So if I ask you, would you trade $1,100 for $21,000? And you say no, you're in the wrong business because you don't understand finance. But for me, that was the actual result. And I tracked those numbers over an extended period because I was used as a case study by Mary Lou Tyler, the author of Predictable Revenue. So I was actually tracking a lot of different metrics in the business, but we tracked my revenue metrics and my ROI on marketing because I was getting such a consistent result. Somebody pulled her aside and said, "Hey, you need to interview this real estate guy. He's got like it's like a machine. It just runs like 6% conversion rates month in and month out with consistent revenue." So Mary Lou asked, and I cut the off-market deals out of that. That was just my brokerage business because it was a keynote speech for a brokerage community for a real estate association. So, but I maintained that 1,100 into 21,000 the whole time. Now, what I'm really stoked about is people like Seth who can spend the same 1,100 in Midtown Manhattan and make, $120,000 a month. So his ROI was exponentially higher than mine, as most of yours would be, because who lives in a market with a median price of 117 grand anymore?
Right.
But I would say that it's a hard question to answer. So I'll answer that question with that valuable the calculator I just gave you. There's notes in the cells that'll actually help you understand how to use the tool. I tried to leave enough breadcrumbs that the average person could understand how my mind built that.
Well, just in a quick look at it is, my numbers aren't way off of this, though I didn't really quite do it this way. But when I put in numbers that would have kind of simulated what I started with, I'm in a large market, 300 leads a month, which is huge in a 6-month campaign. You go, wow, you're going to spend $20,000, but the commissions on that would end up being $500,000. Would I spend $20,000 to make $500,000 all day long? I would open up a second market in the Space Coast of Florida if I was a success and compete with Dave, right? So
Bill, if you want to give me screen share, is it on?
Yeah.
I'll give me screen share. We'll pull it up, and for anyone who's not on Zoom right now, you haven't downloaded it.
There you go.
Oh, I lost my Zoom window.
There you go.
Okay. You have me right now, right?
Yeah, we have a spreadsheet in front of us right now.
And I'll try to blow this up so you can see it. Well, all right. So there's two tabs. There's an input tab, and this will, the copy on this is important. Read this. But I've got this laid out. This is the median numbers across the country. So we haven't talked about this today, but I was one of the original founders of All the Leads, and I built this tool originally in that company to help people set expectations when they were considering whether they should buy leads or not. I still support those guys. I sold my shares, but I still think they're a great company. So this is a 3-month campaign. The median number of leads, if you look at all of the counties across the country, is about 89 per county. That median price, if you look at all the leads pricing across all those 3,000 plus counties, it was about 362. So you can obviously plug in your real numbers here, but just explaining these defaults. Probate Plus was a data augmentation that I created. I'm going to leave that off. 3 letters in the campaign spaced out over 3 months. And you have a website at a cost of $200 and $40 a month. You can put anything in here, regardless of, this is like your miscellaneous category. You choose your profession. Are you an agent or an investor? If you're part of my community, I would love for you to answer both, because that means I've done my job. The median home price, their revenue per deal, I just have 15 grand for an investment deal at a 2% conversion rate. Agent commission around 3% at a 2% conversion rate. But let's say you guys are in California, your commission on a probate deal is capped at 2.5%. Let's say you're a new investor and you kind of suck at prospecting, so your conversion is 1%. So if you're converting at 1% as an investor, 2% as an agent, now this is where it gets really exciting, and I'll scale this up so we can see it a little better. But so what this thing will do is basically lay out your campaign. So you've got $362 in leads. You don't have Probate Plus. You're going to pay $401 for direct mail, $50 a month for your website. So you've got a monthly recurring cost of $813, and then your one-time cost, which is for taking the Probate Mastery course and signing and getting a website. Mastery was in there too. You got a $700 one-time cost. So when we go over here, this is going to add up the entire period, which in this instance is 3 months. So you had 267 leads, which resulted in 5.3 closings estimated, and a monthly expense of $3,000, total expense of around $3,000. And I break out the agent investor, because as an investor, you marketed to all of those leads. You got 2.7 deals. You made a net income of $36,000, or almost a 1,200% ROI. And remember, that was at 1% conversion rate. That's 1 in 100. And then as an agent, you were able to get an additional the same 267 leads, but an additional 8 deals for the same expense. Your expense didn't go up. It was the same prospecting list, same campaign, and over a 2,000% ROI on that. So you're risking, $813 a month to make potentially I thought I had this where it summed up both. But anyways, $83,000 in brokerage income and $36,000 in investor income for an expense of $3,000.
Yeah, and I thought that did a nice job and laid out to people what to expect and prepared them for the process of making a business decision rather than just winging it and hoping for the best. And I think that's the mistake. Real estate agents, they go to a program, they get excited, and they get Red X, and they get data, and they tell themselves they're going to make phone calls for 6 months, and then they stop. But this does show, I think, the importance of sticking at it for a while. Look, we're coming up on the end of the hour. I know you're really busy, Chad, and I really appreciate your time. Probate Mastery is your flagship program, as well as the name of the company, and that's an on-demand program. It used to be 3 days and about 12 hours of material. How is that formed now? It's on. Actually, I'm in the middle of it, so I could describe it myself. But how would you describe the program?
So when I made a big lifestyle change last year, I decided to sell a company, form a company, and move into a fifth wheel and travel the country. I put the original live course into a digital on-demand course, and then started a weekly group coaching call. So building that community. So we have a bigger Facebook group, which is called Estate Professionals Mastermind. That's kind of for our overall community, people who are considering this, but might not be a student or alumni. And then we have the private community, which is Probate Mastery Alumni. And that's only for people who have actually earned the CPE designation. But we've got an on-demand course, a weekly group coaching call that gets turned into a podcast and syndicated. Where we're moving is to bring a lot more of this education. What I find in this community versus the one I built before with all the leads is that we don't ever seem to have a victim. Nobody is ever making excuses or claiming victimhood. They bring more complex issues to the table that are more fun to deal with. Like more people are actually taking action and getting results. We have real-time things to transaction engineer, not marketing theory. So it's the conversation has moved up the scale to where it's apparent to me I need to teach more things like creative financing, private lending, business structuring, how to really meet your own financial goals as well as helping these folks. So the direction we're headed with the community is to move to a more comprehensive community approach where we'll provide the courses, we provide group coaching, a marketing library, marketing services, software. I've got some exciting, Bill had mentioned earlier in this, like where the value and actually highlighting the people that you bring to the table. So we do a series called Ask the Expert. And today we released one with a gentleman that owns an ISA center, like he does ISA services. So I like my vision for that. We're going into strategy on Thursday, so it'll take shape. But I really aspire to grow a bigger community with with real estate probate attorneys, as well as real estate practitioners, where we can all kind of cross pollinate and a rising tide lifts all boats. So we're moving toward that estate mastery community where we can reach more people in the legal field because, like Al Nicoletti and I talked about it. I had another call with Rylas, who I think you've also done collaborations with. And it's, when you meet the top probate attorneys in the country, you realize the other 90% are left behind.
Yes.
Nobody is teaching them how to provide value first. Nobody's teaching them how to create inbound business. So that's a big aspiration for me, is to actually blend the conversation between the legal community and the real estate community, because we're all better off if we're in the same conversation. The consumer is insanely better off if we're all on the same page. So right now it's a digital course on demand. Later in this year, you should expect to actually see that grow into a bigger community where the people whose names I've mentioned here today will be participating. You'll see them in that community. One of the coolest things about this community for me And I keep using the word because it actually applies here. It's not a damn Facebook group. We actually help each other, bring value. I love that when someone asks a question in one of my groups, I don't even have time to answer it before a student or a staff member jumps on and gives them more than they ever expected in return. We don't have to delete things. We don't have to kick people out. In the last 12 months since we launched these groups, I have yet to remove a single person, and we have not had a single poison pen. Nobody has come in and like criticized. So it's a safe place where you can actually get comfortable and get clear and you can even get mentorship from your peers in the group. And that is probably what I'm most proud of, is actually being being able to say, I was able to surround myself with that rare real estate professional who actually has a benevolent outlook on their career. And yeah, we all want to get crazy rich and work 2 days a week. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you put value out first and you earned it. So it's a fun conversation. It's a fun group. And I expect it to grow more in that direction of expect more than less. I've just onboarded some new team members. We're going to be offering more courses, almost like a whole university. So if you really want to dig in and learn how I can monetize every real estate call, it's hard for me to fit that into a probate training, but I can show you how this approach that I take, no matter if it's distressed, if there's debt, if it's free and clear, if there's one owner or 100 owners, no matter how complex the issue is, I can, through conversation, I can guide an emotional conversation to get the logic that I need to monetize every single real estate call. And that's like, there'll be courses like that, like how, so maybe coming, the conversation broadening other than just probate. There'll be a lot of discussions on trust administration, but also on general real estate, best practices and business structure. I think that's where we're headed. And I'm pretty sure Bill will be a part of that if he wants.
I'm not, you're gonna have to kick me out and get me out of there. I got my foot in the door. They're pretty good. So, yeah. Okay, look, we're going to wrap up here because we're a little over time, and I really appreciate your time, Chad. Chad Corbett, Probate Mastery, on-demand course. There's a link in the chat box. If you like, it has the details there. There's an alumni group if you take the program. It's really the beginning of a journey with Chad and the community, of which I'm part of. I'm Bill Gross. I'm here in the EXP National Mastermind. We do this every week on Monday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific time. Chad, on behalf of the people here today and the people watch this, thank you so much for what you do every day, and thank you for your time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bill. And thank all you guys for being here and being interested in this space. I never dreamt we were in my own mastermind. I was, we were talking to a really high level coach. He used to be a Tony Robbins guy. He's on his own now, but he was, talking about, should you be niched or not? And, or how do you find your niche? And the conclusion after a string of 100 comments from high performers was, you don't go find a niche finds you. And that couldn't be true. I came from law enforcement into resort development, and I never dreamt this would be where, but when I looked that first person in the eye that I was able to turn their mountain into a molehill, I knew I was home. I knew where I was. So for those of you that are here, part of this conversation, that are interested in this, don't take that lightly. Like you could be sitting on any webinar, doing anything. Like the niche quite possibly found you. And if that's the case, go for it. Like commit to it.
Thanks again. Great words of wisdom. Chad Corbett, Probate Mastery. Thank you, everybody, EXP, and have a great week. We'll talk